Welcome to DM Neurology Made Easy. This is the 16th episode of Fine Neurophilia Quick Revision series. Let's see the demyelination part 3 video.
Is an important advice I have been giving you since the beginning. So those who are following me from the beginning would have been hearing this. This is a repetition. So you have to always think this is definitely a competition. I admit that. Even know that. But to have peace of mind, to have this ego and all not working against your preparation, don't compare yourself with others, but be compare yourself to who you were yesterday. So be better yourself from what you were yesterday, and compare how you were yesterday with what you are today, so that you have a self improvement of. And every time you sit and study, you may think that okay, I'll do such and such things and complete your studies. But every time you lose focus. But that is all natural. That is basically human. But take time, readjust, restart, refocus, and as many times as you do need to do, you do that. As we have seen last time, the problem occurs when the myelin sheath gets destructed. So myelin sheath, how it gets destructed is because of the, it is a kind of an idiopathic autoimmune disorder. Our auto antibodies are attacking our own myelin sheath as well as the oligodendrocyte. They are basically the B cells, the macrophages, and the dendritic cells. These are the antigen presenting cells, B cells, macrophages, and the dendritic cells. They on the surface have got MHCs, that are the major histocompatibility complex. I'm telling you all this because the pathophysiology, how these medicines in multiple sclerosis acts, is by acting on these all these factors. So if you know this basic pathogenesis of multiple sclerosis, it will be easy for you to remember where these drugs act when you go back and read Harrison. So these MHCs on these antigen presenting cells is shown to the T cells. So when these T cells are shown to the T cells are being shown or flagged with these MHCs, which contains these antigen presenting cells, these T cells get activated. And the T cells then further go and destroy the myelin, so which is in the CNS. And T cells further has a one more important role to play. That is, it has to amplify itself. That is, it has to recruit more cells, more like B cells, other macrophages system, and it has to secrete pro-inflammatory cytokines, and there should be a balance between pro and the anti-inflammatory cytokines. And for this T cells to recruit things from the other, recruit the other inflammatory cells, they have to recruit it from basically the lymphoid organs. That is basically the spleen and the other lymphoid organs. And once the T cells are activated, it has to reach the first, the lymph nodes has the where it has been produced, that the lymph nodes, it has to reach from the lymph nodes, it has first to reach the blood, and from the blood it has to then cross the blood brain barrier to reach to the CNS. And from the CNS, this T cells further activate the B cells also. So it's not just a B cell disease. It also, that is, the previous thought was it is predominantly, it all starts with the T cell and then only the B cell comes into action. But now the thought process has changed, that it is more of a, it is both T cell as well as a B cell. Because as you know, the newer drugs, especially the rituximab, the ocrelizumab, etc., which are being FDA approved for multiple sclerosis, are actually acting more on the B cells. So you need to understand these facts. So crossing of these from these lymphoid organs, these T cells and all lymphocytes, etc., has to egress to the blood-brain barrier. So this aggression of these lymphoid from these lymphoid organs is through one transmitter called sphingosine 1 phosphate. And through blood-brain barrier, there are multiple glycoproteins over it. One of this is alpha 4 beta 1 integrase. These two you just remember. So antigen presenting cell is shown to the T cell. T cell get activated. It recruits from the lymph nodes through aggression, which needs sphingosine 1 phosphate. It reaches the blood, crosses the blood-brain barrier to reach the CNS to cause inflammation and destruction of the myelin. So that is what actually happens in the pathogenesis. And this is what I was talking. This is occurring this is the lymphoid organ, and this is the blood. For the aggression of these T lymphocytes through the to the blood, the sphingosine 1 phosphate is there in the barrier. And this was a previous thought process that T cell is the main thing which acts, but also the B and the other cells also have important role to play, as emphasized by the recent advancements like rituximab and ocrelizumab and all the MABs which have important role to play in the treatment of multiple sclerosis. With this introduction, let us see how you will be able to answer the treatment part of these questions on treatment part of multiple sclerosis. All of these can be used in the acute management of multiple sclerosis, except interferon therapy is not an acute management. It is actually a disease modifying management and is not an acute management. You must have always thought that it is actually intravenous methylprednisolone, which is the only acute treatment. Yes, it was the initial it was initially the only acute management which was thought. We give intravenous methylprednisolone for 3 to 5 days, a 500 milligram or a 1000 milligram IV dose, then taper for about 12 weeks. But recent trials have shown, which is given in Bradley, that oral methylprednisolone is just similarly, it is non-inferior, it is equally good. The same dose of oral methylprednisolone is equally good for multiple sclerosis. Also, ACTH therapy, that is adrenocorticotropic hormone therapy, is equally good for multiple sclerosis. So remember that to prevent a relapse, we have to give something so that the disease doesn't come back. So that is actually interferon therapy and not an acute treatment, which is an incorrect statement among the following. So pseudoexacerbation, this is due to a transient conduction block because of heat sensitivity, or the change in the I had informed you regarding the sodium channels, potassium channels, low channel, fast channel, etc. Please revise that part. These are the basics. Lithium carbonate, whether it is used to treat the steroid induced insomnia. Oral steroids are notorious to cause insomnia and emotional lability rather than IV steroids. So is lithium carbonate useful in that? And is plasma exchange of effective therapy? You have seen the previous treatments, IV steroids, oral steroids, ACTH, etc. Can we use plasma exchange if these therapy fails? And in case of mild attacks, in the case of a relapse, should we definitely go for a treatment, mild minimal attacks of multiple sclerosis? These are the options given. Yes, pseudo exacerbations, we should be very careful, because the problem with pseudo exacerbation, as we know, it is due to heat sensitivity. This pseudo exacerbation actually could be due to some underlying infection in a multiple sclerosis patient, the patient developing a urinary tract infection. The patient may develop increased fever, hyperthermia, and the patient may develop pseudo exacerbation, that is increase in weakness. And if you misdiagnose this as a relapse of multiple sclerosis, and already if the patient is on disease modifying drugs, and you think that it is actually a relapse, and you further treat the patient with steroids, which will flare up the infection, then it will cause more harm than good. So pseudo exacerbation, you should treat the underlying cause rather than treat it with the glucocorticoids. So the incorrect statement is pseudo exacerbation should not be treated with glucocorticoids, and we should have a high index of suspicion whether it is actually a pseudo exacerbation. What is pseudo exacerbation? Please go back to the previous video last week, 2 weeks before video, and check. So treatment of MS is very important. We divide basically into acute treatment, acute attacks, which we have discussed now. That is basically steroids, the IV, oral, and the ACTH, and the plasma exchange may be tried, and the disease modifying therapy or the relapse preventing therapy, DMA, that is that group of drugs, and the symptomatic treatment, because we know the various symptoms. The most common symptom would be other than the visual symptoms and all, the most tiring other symptoms would be fatigue, ataxia, spasticity, etc. These all emotional lability, etc. These all should be addressed. That will be more disabling to the patient. So these are to be seen. And extra points to remember in acute treatment was is that in 1992 was the first trial which was done. And that is the one which showed that IV treatment is better. And later trials showed that even oral therapy is better and is actually non-inferior. And in case of refractory the treatment refractory to steroid therapy, we can go in for ACTH and plasma exchange. So in all the conferences or in any talks by experts in multiple sclerosis, you may be hearing all these kinds of technical jargons like NEDA, MEDA, etc. Don't be apprehensive or afraid of these terms. These are simple terms, like no evidence of disease activity. We are just seeing we are giving a treatment for a disease, and we are seeing whether there is a evidence of a disease activity. For checking for an evidence of a disease activity, we see few things: whether the disease is relapsing, because we know MS is a relapsing remitting disease. We check this progression by our EDSS, that is the expanded disability scoring system, which was devised by Krutski. Then MRI activity. MRI activity, whether the active lesion. We discussed in last class extensively regarding the McDonald's criteria. And also, after this activity occurs, we know there is inflammation and there is gliosis, that is brain atrophy. So these are the factors which we need to see. If there are no relapse, no progression, no MRI activity, and no brain atrophy, we can confirm and say that there is no evidence of disease activity. These 3-4 checklists, if you see, then we can say there is NEDA, 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 that is no evidence of disease activity. So all the drugs, all the trials, if you go and see, they'll be telling you this thing, NEDA or MEDA. MEDA is actually minimal evidence of disease activity. So NEDA 3 doesn't include. So these are levels of this relapse. So if you give a drug, we are giving this disease modifying drugs and checking for whether patient has improved or not. So highest level is actually, there are 8 levels, but for clinical purposes, we see whether the patient has achieved NEDA 3 or NEDA 4. So just see that in our disease, we see whether the patient has relapse, disability, and MRI findings. MRI, first thing is activity. Second thing is atrophy. So difference between NEDA 3 and NEDA 4, just understand that NEDA 3, apart from NEDA 3 findings, NEDA 4, there shouldn't be any brain volume loss. This is the extra finding you should need to know. Just added that question so that you get to know what this NEDA is in your mind. So all these trials regarding these drugs will be looking into all these NEDA findings. So now coming to the first approved drug for multiple sclerosis, that was interferon therapy. Interferons were the first drugs approved for FDA for RRMS. So which is the wrong statement among the following? This question was taken mixed from both Harrison and Bradley. If you read both, you would be able to answer. Yes, you're right. So interferons were definitely the first drugs to be approved by FDA for treatment of relapsing remitting MS. And it is immaterial if you find antibodies after giving interferons. So interferons are actually antiviral for antiviral, and in the presence of this interferon, there are antibodies against these interferons which we are giving. We have a variety of interferons. It doesn't matter much. It doesn't affect our change in treatment. And interferon's efficacy is based on the immunomodulatory properties, which I'll discuss. And the commonest side effect is once an injection is given, we get a basic flu-like illness, that is generalized myalgia, etc. How it acts? Previously, we had talked regarding what is called antigen-presenting cells, MHC, and the MHC is shown to the T cell, and T cells get activated and reaches the CNS to cause destruction. So there is down regulation of MHC. So when the MHC, that is the major histocompatibility complex, is down regulated, it is not shown to the T cells. So it is down regulated. And hence there is reduction in the inflammation. And there is decreased T cell proliferation. and there is limitation of trafficking. So this is actually a continuous process which is happening. So once the MHC molecules are downregulated, nothing further happens. So this prevents the attack rate, and the MRI will show less number of active lesions. So these are the drugs, interferons. So if you pegylate it, it can be used for a prolonged interval. So study this could be useful. Side effects of interferon, keep in mind, as it causes flu-like illness, it can increase the liver enzymes, leukopenia, anemia, and it can cause depression. And injection site reactions can occur. So we need to monitor blood about 3 to 6 months if you are getting interferon injections. So we'll be getting once a weekly injection or a thrice per week, or in case of pegylated interferon, once every 2 weeks. So these injections, if you are giving a multiple sclerosis patient, monitor the blood levels to look for leukopenia, anemia, etc. every 3 to 6 months. Next useful drug which was identified or FDA approved was glatiramer acetate, which is a combination of, it is a protein which was used to treat multiple sclerosis. It is a combination of 4 amino acids. So this is a usual question asked in the MCQ. What is which one of the following is not a amino acid which is contained in glatiramer acetate? So it is basically lysine rather than leucine. They can give you change it to tyrosine to tryptophan, glutamate to something else. So it causes these other findings. So same thing, binding to MHC molecules are changed. So there is a balance between the pro-inflammatory and regulatory cytokines are changed. So what happens if glatiramer injection? These are the trials which are given in the New Bradley. These are the trials which are given in the New Bradley. The first one was used to compare, just to see how the glatiramer works. Rest 3 were used to compare the glatiramer with interferons. And what do you see here? This is what is called lipoatrophy. When the injection of glatiramer is IM injection is given, there is lipoatrophy occurring. So this is one of the side effects of glatiramer acetate. All the drugs given below can cause the given MRI finding in multiple sclerosis patient. So any disease modifying drug given in a multiple sclerosis patient cause this MRI finding. So what is this MRI finding? First, you have to identify and keep in mind what the MRI finding is. Don't jump and answer. I told you that every time you see a question, take your time before answering. Those who answered natalizumab knew the answer, that the MRI finding was that of progressive multifocal leukoencephalopathy. And the best answer for that is actually natalizumab. But the question here is, which are all the following drugs given below cause MRI finding except? So this is an except question, and natalizumab is notorious to cause PMLE. That is why in every natalizumab, in every MS patient, if we are planning to give natalizumab, we have to check for JC virus antibody. If it is JC virus is positive, we never go on to proceed with the starting the patient on natalizumab. So the answer here is glatiramer. PMLE, you know, actually PMLE, there will be hyperintense lesions, and PMLE will result, it is due to the JC virus infection. It can cause multiple problems. It can present with ataxia, visual disturbance, encephalopathy. The patient will be presenting with cognitive decline. And the treatment is actually immune reconstitution. Most common cause of PMLE is not these drugs. It is actually HIV infection. So HIV infection, how to correct it is actually by immune reconstitution. And there is no definite treatment for this treatment, for this condition. As you see here, most common cause is actually HIV infection and other immunosuppression. So MS also is, MS modifying drugs cause just less than 5% of PMLEs worldwide, and of which natalizumab is notorious to cause, and other drugs are basically fingolimod, dimethyl furoate, alemtuzumab, cladribine, and ocrelizumab is actually it doesn't cause PMLE, because ocrelizumab is usually given to patients who would have been treated with other drugs. These above drugs would have been going on to these drugs and would have been changed to ocrelizumab. So this is actually called carryover PMLE. So that is the thing you should know. So PMLE is a sure shot question in future exams. This is a sure shot question. That is progressive multifocal leukoencephalopathy. So next question is a MS patient who was on frequent relapses for interferon beta. Interferon beta is the first line drug which we give. So because he was having frequent relapses, he was put on natalizumab. But on checking, every 6 months, we check the JC virus antibody. And JC virus antibody was found to be strongly positive. So how will we proceed with the treatment of such a case? How will we proceed with treatment of such a case of patient on natalizumab having JC virus and positivity, antibody positivity? Will we continue the current regimen, or we give the natalizumab and add another disease modifying agent, or discontinue this natalizumab? Natalizumab is given 6 monthly. So whether we'll wait for the next 6 months or we start another drug within 4 weeks after the last dose of natalizumab, or initiate a new drug and continue natalizumab for one more dose. Is it okay to give one more dose of natalizumab if it is strongly possible? The strongly positive JC virus antibody. Stop natalizumab if it's strongly positive and start another disease modifying agent which doesn't cause a PMLE. So natalizumab, how does it act? It is, as I had told you initially, once this lymphocytes reaches the blood-brain barrier, there is alpha-1 beta-4, alpha-4 beta-1 integrin needs to be there, which binds this lymphocyte to the blood-brain barrier and takes it back to the CNS and cause inflammation. So if we block this step, that is binding of this lymphocyte to the alpha-4 beta-1 with the help of natalizumab, that is the alpha-4 beta-1 blocker, that is a MAB, then this step is blocked, and thus we can prevent the CNS inflammation in case of multiple sclerosis. So this patient here has increased risk and hence need to stop natalizumab immediately. And to avoid a relapse, so if you stop natalizumab, the patient can have relapse, and the relapse usually occurs about 3 to 6 months. So start early. You don't wait for another next dose of natalizumab. Start with another disease-modifying drug about 3-4 weeks of stoppage. And you should know one more thing. This JC virus actually is just like a TB. It is very common, and 50 to 60% of adults would be seropositive. So it's imperative to check JC virus antibody before starting the patient on natalizumab. And JC virus and negative antibody patients will have a seroconversion to positivity every year, about 2 to 3%. So the current recommendation are to retest this antibody every 6 months in patients with natalizumab therapy. So you should know that thing. So cardiotoxic drugs in MS are basically fingolimod and mitoxantrone. So fingolimod notoriously causes few of these heart symptoms. So which one is not the abnormality associated with fingolimod? The fingolimod prevents the egress of the T lymphocytes from the lymph node or the lymphoid organs to the blood. Third degree heart block has not been reported in case of fingolimod. Only first degree, second degree, bradycardia and QT prolongation are there in fingolimod. And we have to see, once we start fingolimod, don't send the patient. We have to check the ECG after 6 hours of starting the fingolimod. And as we have seen here, fingolimod actually acts on sphingosine 1-phosphate, which is a newer drug for, which is the newer congener for fingolimod. The newer approved one is 2019 was actually siponimod, which is the only FDA approved drug for primary progressive MS. So only FDA approved drug for primary progressive MS is ocrelizumab. It is actually ocrelizumab. It was approved in 2017 for relapsing remitting MS, and with the trial. These trials are all given in Bradley. So in institute exams, these could be asked. So all the trials I am not taking from any journals or any other extra internet. It has been taken only from Bradley. It is not there in Harrison. Harrison, you should know that it was updated, I think 3 years or 4 years back, 3 years back. Bradley has been recently updated. It got released in this year, March 2021. So all the updated ones are there. So I think the recent coming NEET exam and all, or the institute exam could be having some questions regarding Bradley. So at least study this part. What I am emphasizing. Even if you don't read Bradley, just know this part. At least revise this video at least before the exam.